Life is Feeling Counting the Ways is a self-sponsored independent podcast brought to you in association with Antonio.media. The show is essentially an art project where we explore different career roles and converse with ideas. It's not exactly made for children and may at times feature sensitive content based on a wide repertoire of lived experiences of people. Listener discretion is strongly advised. The show, as usual, explicitly promises no answers to anything whatsoever, and as the name suggests, explores feelings. Everyone here speaks for themselves. Nothing is cast in stone, and we are all, in true human fashion, expressly allowed to change our minds. Life is Feeling Counting the Ways does not offer advice based on the professional opinion of licensed lawyers, psychologists, psychiatrists, teachers, moral authorities, or the like. I am myself a trainer, but more likely than not, I am not your trainer. When in doubt, consult a professional. For more information, questions, or contributions, feel free to visit lifeisfeeling.com and use the contact form. Hello, my name is Antonio, and in this episode, we look at some of the ways that help to differentiate us as human beings living, thriving, and working within an AI-driven paradigm, differentiating the human experience from the artificial one. Life is Feeling Counting the Ways also explores in today's borrowed episode some of the things that help to make the essential difference as we approach achieving a well-grounded feeling of confidence, sovereignty, and fluency using a foreign language. I'm a language trainer, but as a photography enthusiast, there was a time when, even though I had both a smartphone and a dedicated camera, I felt as if the value of time, effort, and resources that I invested in learning photography was at risk. At risk of being eroded by my own very capable smartphone. I didn't want to pay any attention to smartphone photography. I didn't try. It was like a total rejection. And then I got to the place where I felt better by only doing things with my camera that my smartphone could not do. Many users of cameras can perhaps identify with that. Now, this approach was a little bit limited, conservative, or, just not so nice, but it also wasn't too bad because I didn't allow myself and my skill as a photographer to be co-opted, so to speak, into competing with the inherent convenience, speed, and practicality that a smartphone offers. I didn't get pulled onto that stage and sought to differentiate the very story I told with my camera from that which I told with my smartphone. Now I've gotten used to happily shooting with both, but for different reasons. Now, again, there's not too much new under the sun, and this fight among competing technologies has always ensued. Artificial intelligence is, however, something new, and the palpable fear is no longer surrounding competing technologies, but more this time it would seem to be about human against the technology itself. People are losing their jobs in the blink of an eye. Copywriters, for example, must be having a really hard time. And even me as a teacher, sometimes trainer, sometimes coach, I was told recently by someone that I should probably learn a skill like plumbing or refresh my massage therapy qualification by 2026. I do feel a little bit scared sometimes. It's very exciting, but it's something that will affect all of us going forward. How can we help to differentiate ourselves from the machine? I hope you enjoy the episode, and for those of you who were subscribed for Life is Feeling Counting the Ways, let me just tell you that this episode that you're about to hear was originally made for my other show, which is called English Coach Podcast, Living the Language. However, because of the way the show unfolded or the episode unfolded, I thought it better to publish it here. There are also some links that will take you to the show description, or what I like to call show notes exclusive. As I said, recorded originally for the English Coach podcast, Living the Language. And you are free to also follow these links if you're interested in seeing some behind the scene action, so to speak, seeing what I look like when I'm filming and, getting a little more emotion perhaps. And for those of you who are interested in improving your language, the show notes exclusive for this episode also includes recorded transcript where you can follow the words as I read. The words are highlighted, and it's a new thing that I'm trying just for my people out there who are looking to improve their language skills. So then, it's a fantastic show. I spent a lot of time doing it, and I really hope you enjoy it, and I'm looking forward to any feedback that you might have. All right, so without further ado, on with the show. Hello, my name is Ian Antonio Pattison, and today it's all about three things. I want to talk to you about three things today, and it's a little bit different because I'm actually doing a show notes exclusive, so you'll be able to see how things look behind the scenes, and maybe you'll notice a difference in the way I speak because I'm actually doing a video right now. Now, the three things are, and I'm reading from my script, it's about how you get to the stage where you can feel free to speak with fluency. As you know, I'm a language trainer. I've been doing that for 15 years now. And that is, my profession. I know how to do that. And I know about the stories that people go through, the things people have to do to get to that stage. The second thing I'll be talking about is something that I've always spoken about since the beginning of the podcast, the democratization of the learning experience. And last, but by no means least, I'm going to be talking about art, the idea of art exchange and what it does for me, what it can do for you, and also what it does for the entire adult learning experience. So I hope those three topics sound interesting to you, and I hope you enjoy the show for today. All right, now, without further ado, I'm going to go straight into the first topic. Now, as I said, it's all about getting to a stage where you feel freely enough to communicate with confidence and a certain sovereignty about what you're saying, your presentation, how you walk into a room, how you use English as a second language. Fluency. In German, we say fließend sprechen. Now, from the experience I've had teaching, again, over the past 15 years or so, more than 15, it's actually 16, I recognize that one of the most significant aspects of especially the adult learning experience is developing that confidence that gives you a feeling of freedom when you use your target language, which in this case is English. And that is one of my first jobs. My first mission, so to speak, is to get my students to a place where they just feel that, right? And what exactly does that mean? It means that there's a notion that I speak of on this show as well as my second show, and it's the notion of perfect imperfection. And, in some cultures, we place a lot of emphasis on the idea of perfection, which in many cases doesn't really exist, the idea of perfection, and we put ourselves under so much pressure. And another thing about adult learning as well, unless an adult feels as if they have a 95% chance of being perfect, they don't try. And that is kind of bad, right? So fluency is also about getting to a place where you feel as if you don't have to worry so much about trying to be perfect. You get to a place where, you realize that if people want to understand you, they will. And you step out into the world with a kind of confidence which says, I do have my own language. I never say that my English is bad, but what I might say is that I'm learning the language, right? And that puts you in a better position than many native speakers of English because, many native speakers of English, I know I've said it before, they're lazy. They don't try to learn a foreign language. So you're better than them when you go out into the world and try to present yourself in a foreign language. And don't try to promise anybody perfection. One promise that I make, or you could say a promise that I never make, is when I was learning German, I struggled for so long, right? It took me about 2.5 years to start speaking. I spent a lot of time listening to people, reading, slowly, watching films. I watched a lot of theater and satire and, funny things, comedy shows and so on. And that kind of helped me during that time. I learned a lot about body language because that is what I had to work with. And another quite funny thing is that when I was learning German, I've said this many times, the boys with whom I was studying at the time when I was in university, they were, roughly about 7 years my junior. So I saw them as being boys. They would make a lot of fun of me, and I didn't like that all the time. So I just kind of stopped talking to them and I just talked to the ladies, and now I have lots of female friends. Mark you, I've been single for the past 5 or 6 years, but I learned German mostly from women because, the boys just wanted to joke around. So it's all about, taking the time you need, and you'd be surprised to know where the language comes from. And again, in terms of perfection, after going through all of that, going through, people making fun of me, going through having to make the decision to talk mostly with women because, they actually took my language learning seriously and so on, I got to the stage where I just said, you know what? I will not promise any perfection unless it's in my own language. And if somebody needs perfection in their lives, they can book a course, right? I only offer perfection in my own language, my mother tongue. So you have to also get to that stage where you just stop apologizing. Nobody expects perfection from you, not even your trainer. Now, even if you're trying to pass someone's exam, someone's test, it could be the IELTS test or the Cambridge test or whatever, it seems as if they want perfection, but it's just that they have to make your learning progress somehow measurable. And that is why it feels as if they want perfection from you. But unless you're Chat GPT or something, nobody can reasonably expect that from you. So, just be gentle to yourself, right? Now, again, in approaching fluency, you might notice as well, I have a script. I'm looking over there at my script. It's not really a script. It's just a list of bullet points. When you meditate, not really meditate, but when you reflect on the idea of fluency, you have to also reflect on purpose. What is your purpose? Where are you right now as a learner, right? And there are two schools of thought. You can think of this whole learning experience in terms of form, or you can think of it in terms of function. So if you think of it in terms of form, that is the form as in the formality of things. That is learning a lot of grammar, learning a lot of things or many things about the language and so on. Right, going really deeply into grammar and sometimes not even speaking as much as you should. Not so much, let's say, productive skills as you should, going out into the world and talking to people, but getting used to and practicing structured problem solving that might not help you in the real world. Now, that is focusing on form, the formality, right? And then there is the functional side. The functional side is actually what helps me most, because I didn't benefit from so many German classes when I came here. I learned my German on the street. My girlfriend at the time, God bless her soul, she was actually a nice girl. She was a very nice girl. And she helped me to realize that I have to read. And I would spend 3 days on one page of the Spiegel. It's a popular magazine here. The Germans among you will know which one it is. I'd spend 3 days on one page trying to understand everything. And every day I went through it, marking, making notes of words, looking up words, looking at formulations, translating them, comparing them with my own language, asking myself, how would I say that in English, and so on and so forth. Stopping to do that, but just accepting the meaning in German, all these things, one page, 3 days, right? Well, sometimes 2 days, but 3 days, because, you can't do it for 5 hours straight. You have to revisit it. And she was the one who kind of forced me to do that. And as I said, together with watching films, watching theater, watching comedy shows and so on, that is what helped me. I also worked in a bar, right? I worked in a bar and my job forced me to speak to people. right? I was learning German to talk to people. So I spoke to people. And as I always say again, if you're learning a language to talk to people, then talk to people. And if you're learning a language to do something with it, do something with it. So again, this is on the functional side. And that's a whole new school of thought, because I'm going a little fast here, but if you want to learn your language, again, to do something with it, right? It could be to talk to people, could be to go on vacation, could be to follow a hobby, or, whatever it is. Think about using language. How are you going to use it? The grammar books are not going to help you. I'm going to grab this grammar book and I'm going to show you something. This grammar book, this here, it's from Murphy, and it's from, what is it? Cambridge Essential Grammar in Use, Deutsche Ausgabe, right? And this one is for beginners from A1 to B1. And there's another blue one that I have, which is more for the intermediate students. This one has German in it. And there's also another advanced one in green. I use these books all the time. And I can tell you this. I had a student once who, it was a very important client, very, very important client at the time. And this client was, I don't know, yes, worth something like 20,000 euros a year, this client. Yes, that was the anticipated cash flow from that client. I eventually lost them. But at the time, he had this one particular student or learner, course participant. There was nothing in the grammar book for me to teach him. Absolutely nothing. Nothing. Yes. And I actually felt worried at the time. I felt, strange. And one day I said, all right, fine. You definitely have the form down. Yes, you have all the structured check boxes. You have done all the grammar puzzles, right? There are no more grammar puzzles I can think about, right? And I actually felt fear that probably I'd lose this client because I can't teach this guy. So I said, okay, fine. We're going to meet one day on the street. We're going to go out and buy some cake and coffee or whatever. And we went to this store. And I said to him, okay, go, order your stuff. And he couldn't order a slice of cake, right? Now, this is a grown man, right? And of course, I'm not gonna, say any names or anything like that. But this guy, again, I'll repeat for you. In terms of the form, he knew everything in the grammar book. There was nothing to teach. But in terms of the function, in terms of using the language in the real world, talking to people, unstructured, unexpected language, dancing with the language, as I like to say, he couldn't order a slice of cake. And, he had a great panic that day. I remember that day and I will never forget it. It's an example I use all the time. God bless his soul again. We did manage to do some stuff and we did manage to do some practice. And luckily, we got over that hurdle of getting to a place where he felt much more confident to speak freely, to be much more gentle with himself, with the language, and not to worry too much about what people think or what people say. Now, that sounds maybe easy to do. It's not easy, especially if you're in a culture like this. This culture can be quite unforgiving. This is Germany, right? And they can be quite unforgiving, as far as mistakes are concerned, right? You are abgestempelt. Yes, it's a word that is, I'm not going to say it only exists here, but the culture can be quite unforgiving for mistakes. And for that reason, many people they have a very strong fear of going out and talking. And, it's like shooting yourself in the foot. And it's one of the first things that I have to help people to get over. Yes, this inability to be gentle enough to oneself, to recognize that if people want to understand you, they will. And there was a time when, as I said, I was at that as well. I didn't care about mistakes that I was making. Even now, sometimes in German, when I don't know if it's der, die, das, I just say d, right? And I don't care, right? If I have to write something, I write it in perfect German. And for that, I use a translator, right? Or I pay somebody 50 euros a page to translate. But I'm not, it's not about disrespecting the language, but, I'm an adult. Yes, I always say 30 plus, but truth be told, I'm 40 plus. And I'm at the stage where, as I said, if anybody needs perfection in their lives, I can promise that in my own language. And, I'm gentle to myself, and I want to help people to get to that stage, because if you are not able to do that, you will not make progress, right? So we've looked at the form side and we've also looked at the function side. I hope you understand what I mean. We've also spoken a little about grammar puzzles. Grammar puzzles are fantastic, but they're not going to help you to order a slice of cheesecake when you have to. Now, the second thing that I wanted to talk to you about today, hopefully this is a short one. I'm going really fast. And as I said, if you're listening to the podcast, you can head on over to EnglishCoachPodcast.com. And if you're interested in seeing a little behind the scenes, what I look like when I'm doing these podcast shows, you can go over there and watch what I'm preparing for you today. Show notes exclusive. I'm posting a video of behind the scenes, and I'm just going to be posting it there. I'm not giving it to YouTube, putting it out into the world. Truth be told, I want you to visit my website, plain and simple. And this is a reward for my true fans out there who also care to visit my website sometimes and don't just think that I work for Spotify or Amazon or Deezer or any one of these apps, Apple. I don't work for these guys. I work for you, right? I want you to visit my website, and I have lots of stuff there for you. And this show notes exclusive is an approach that I've been taking for quite a while. I want people to come to my website. I am doing this for you, and that is why you will not find it on YouTube. All right, now the third thing, the democratization of the learning experience. Now, what exactly does that mean? It means that learning is now accessible to more people. Let's say I studied business here. Before I came here, I did something called quantity surveying. Sometimes I just say Bauingenieurwesen here because, people don't understand. But it's very close to a profession called Bauvermessungswesen. Studied that before I came here at university. Worked in that field for about 4 years. And then I came here and studied business. And I think at the time it was... it's what allowed me to study. I started at Viadrina in Frankfurt Oder, and they just saw my university studies in Jamaica as A-levels. It's another story for another day, but I got in based on that. And ever since those studies, I also learned to become a teacher, and I also did, I do have master's credits, but I didn't finish the degree in leadership for sustainability. And what I recognized historically in terms of this democratization, even a market, and this is from business studies, a market is based on imperfect knowledge, right? If you don't have a group of people who are oblivious as to the real value of their work or their resources, right, then nobody can make a profit. If you look at, for example, the German market, it's very mature. Why? Because everybody's informed. A lot of people are informed as to what the real costs of things are. And that is here in this country. And for example, online, these days, if you buy, cameras online or whatever, this is my favorite camera here, my little K3. If I look for a lens at, Idealo, and then I go to Amazon, I don't see much of a difference because most of the sellers, they are aware of what the market price is, and the differences might be 10% or 5%. Everybody's selling it for the same price, basically, unless somebody's in trouble, right? So what I'm saying is that a market itself is based on imperfect knowledge, right? So there will always be people who are not in the know, right? And empires are built on that. So again, that's not a story for another day, but the democratization of the learning experience means that everybody has more and more access to knowledge. I started this podcast with this idea that everybody has the knowledge of the world in their pockets in form of their smartphone. I've been around for a long time. When I tell my students that I'm older than Google, they laugh at me, right? But I've been around since before the internet. I saw the rise of the internet. I saw the rise of Google. I saw the rise of gadgets, as a child. When a child like 10 or so, my idea of high science fiction was a watch with a television on it. And when I tell that to a child, they laugh at me. I say, well, science fiction, that is nothing strange. But that was my idea of science fiction. And, I'm not that old. I don't have so many gray hairs, right? But it's going faster and faster. And now we have the knowledge of the world in our pockets. I have the knowledge of the world right here in front of me, right? In my camera even, which has GPS, I can speak to the stars and mark my camera, my photos with my location and the time when a photo was taken. Even this camera that I'm working on right now, it is saving information on probably my location, the time, and lots of other conditions, things that I don't even know about in the metadata, right? Now, this knowledge that is out there, it has now been supplemented by ChatGPT and the like. Now, we're all talking about artificial intelligence, right? But let's not forget that a large part of it is language learning models, right? So it's all about looking at great databases of languages or language and working out the probability of which words are usually used together. I am not a computer scientist, but if you really think about it, right? Yes, there is learning. Yes, there's a kind of intelligence. Some people say it doesn't really exist. It's human intelligence programmed in. But my point here is that it's a language model. And what this is all about, our discussion right now is about language. So, it's not to be taken lightly. ChatGPT and all these things that are out there, this hype and this, stuff that's been around for a while, it is also adding to the world of knowledge that the children have access to. There is no more, let's say, the imperfect knowledge that once ruled the world and allowed the elites to rule the masses, the ignorant mass. That is being broken down and leveled out, right? And that is something that I like. Because, me, I'm not a rich guy. Yeah, I'm not. And I like the idea of people getting into contact with knowledge, people, getting into the know. That is what I'm about, It's not about being a radical or being some kind of activist here. Not necessarily. I'm living a reality that I hold to be true. And I'm a teacher, of course. That's what I do. I give knowledge. I'm an educator. So, of course, I'm happy when I see new methods, new means of my students to learn, my course participants, my clients to learn and enrich their learning experience. And this little topic on the democratization of the learning experience, it's just it's a reminder, it's a celebration of what I find to be a fantastic development. Yes, it is getting more people in the know, and I can just hope and pray that, the kids out there, you take this seriously. Don't just use the internet and this new power that you have for fun and games and rubbish, Use it to uplift yourself. As I said, I'm working on a script or from a script right now, and I just spoke about the access. Again, speaking of the democratization of the learning experience, right? As I said, I'm not a money child, I'm not a rich person. I don't belong to any elite group, right? People have a way of forming their own little elite groups and their own little status realms, right? And, that's not really something that I need. Right? So much, in saying that as well, it's also kind of elitist in pretending that I don't need status myself. But, it's programmed into all of us as human beings. Our society is built on it. And sometimes, it's just more leisure-ish or more ridiculous than other times, Anyway, part of the idea of the democratization of the learning experience also has to do with the question that every teacher has to ask themselves. Teacher, trainer, coach, Lernbegleiter, whatever you want to call it. You have to ask yourself a certain question at the beginning, especially now, more and more in this modern world, and especially the more you deal with adults. I deal with adults, I deal with young adults, and sometimes I deal with children, not so much. But at the beginning of every course, I ask myself the question, and this is no joke, I ask myself, what am I here for? Am I here to show my course participants how great I am? Or am I here to hold their hand, meet them where they are, hold their hand, and take them to the place that they want to be with the skills and knowledge and experience that I have? That's a very good question. Because, there are some people in this world, they are all about the form. And this is where sometimes the form is disconnected from the function, because they're not about teaching anybody anything. They're about presenting themselves as high and mighty, right? And as separate and apart from the learner or the learning goal, as something that can never be reached. And that has never been what I am about. Yes, I've never been about that. This whole podcast is about reaching people. And my whole approach to teaching is based on the relational. I build relationships with people. I will continue to work like that, and I make no apologies for it. Now, the question as to whether, I'm here to show you how great I am, or to help you, to hold your hand and to take you to the place you want to be. It's also a cultural thing, because I also suspect that some cultures need to have some kind of unreachable ideal to drive them on, right? They need that. My culture doesn't need that. I come from an ex-colony. And, my podcasts, I'm doing now the English Coach podcast, and I'm also doing Life is Feeling, Counting the Ways, which is different. And that goes into more playful topics, as I might say. And this is one case where, the topics might drift a little bit, right? And, but I have to drift here. The reason why I'm not exactly like that is because, there is something about the German culture which is different from my culture as an ex-colony. It's a different approach. We don't really believe that the high and mighty man or woman up there who feels themselves better than all of us has our best interest at heart all the time, right? So it's a totally different mentality. And some people need that, but that has never really been my approach. And I don't really deal with adults or people that way. I take a more persuasive approach. I tell people why. I ask them first. I try to form a learning contract. What is your goal? What do you want to achieve? In a democratic way. Again, it's still the same. The democratization of the learning experience. I say, what do you want to reach? Yes? What is your goal? Where are you now? Right? What do you imagine your strengths to be? What do you imagine the things to be that you want or you have to do to achieve this goal? And I hold their hand. And I don't pretend as if I even can teach anything. Right? The only thing I can do as an adult trainer is to create a space and nurture a learning environment and hope and pray that learning happens. That's all I can do, right? So, I don't take the approach of being the source of all things good, right? That has never worked for me, and I've actively chosen not to do that, not to take that approach. Now, another thing that I wanted to talk about the democratization of I have a problem with that word, the democratization of the learning experience, is that I'm not about locking people in to learning programs or the like. That is not my game. There are some schools, there are some apps, for example. I've been single for about, as I said, 5 or 6 years. So I have tried out dating apps. Nothing against dating apps. They're fantastic. I've tried out social nets. Yes. The Instagrams, the Facebooks, and so on. And, everybody knows these apps, they don't really want you to leave. They want you to be there forever, right? They don't want you to leave. And whether it be a dating app or a social nets app, Instagram wants you to spend hours and hours there, so they can stick Werbung in your face. And, there's some schools of thought and some schools that are like that as well. They don't want you to leave. They want you to stay there forever and ever. And they don't really want you so overtly to reach your goal, right? So, that might be a little bit extreme. But if you focus, if your school of thought is based on the form, the striving for the unreachable form as an ideal, right? Chances are you're never going to reach it. But if you look at the function where you say to someone, I'm going to take you to a place where you can start using the language productively, and then you can decide for yourself how far you want to go, how deep you want to go into the language, if you want to become the next Goethe or Schiller, right? If you want to become the next Shakespeare. My first goal is to give people the confidence And when they have the confidence, you know what? They say to me, Mr. Patterson, I think we have gotten to the stage where, we can take a break, right? I feel as if I've reached the next stage, the next level, and it's time to say goodbye. And I say, you know what? It's been wonderful. Goodbye, and I wish you all the best. That has happened all the time. Just last week, one student said to me that he has reached that place, and, he moved on. That was last year, about 2 weeks ago. And, we're still friends. We're still in contact. A few months before that, another lady came to me. She wanted to apply for a new job. And we did some job interview practice. We did some presentation practice and so on. We did that. And then she got to that stage. She did her job interview. She got her job. Now she's doing her job, which has a lot to do with English. And we're still friends, but there are no more classes, right? And it just came to a natural end because she had a goal, right? And it wasn't about me trying to lock her into any kind of forever paying loop, right? And a lot of these apps will do this to you. So be very careful, yeah? Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about is 33 minutes, and this, I'm going to try to make it about 37, was the art and the free spirit that drives a lot of what I do. Now, art is a thing that is scorned by a lot of people, right? If I go to some business people and the minute I say art, they run away, right? But, let's be true to ourselves. We're just coming out of a pandemic. And if it wasn't for art and the creative spirit and tension, the creative tension, yes, creative tension and the creative spirit, many of us would not have survived the pandemic. Look at how online learning, remote learning has blossomed before the pandemic, right? I studied at Cambridge University to learn to become an online tutor, right? And for years and years, online tutoring was scorned by the masses, right? They laughed at it. And then the pandemic came and suddenly it works. Yeah. Now I'm still doing that and, it's great. But that was a kind of a creative tension that forced us to learn Zoom and to recognize that Google Connect and all these things, they work. And all these companies as well, Zoom became a multi-million-dollar company, right? They experienced huge success because of that. And this was the creative tension that was created, the same creative tension that drives art. And we should not disrespect art. Now, why am I talking about art? A lot of the people that I know who are learning English right now, the best of the best fluent speakers of language that I know are people who learned the language not from grammar books, right? Not from formal classes, but from art. They went out into the world and they did other things with the language, things they like. And because they like these things, because there's a passion for these things already, the language flowed inside them and it didn't feel like work, right? I've met people who learned language from songs, love songs, R&B songs, reggae songs, hip-hop songs, right? Pop songs, yeah? Even gangster rap, yeah? There are people I know who learned language through attending dance workshops. Can you imagine dance? Yeah. And there are people I know as well who have found interest in photography. I'm also interested in photography. And they teach themselves, they go out, they buy a book on photography, they learn about a lens, for example, in their own language, and then they go out, find the same knowledge in English, and they check that. And you know what? That takes you almost 50% of the way because you already have the knowledge, right? You have the knowledge. And it's all about meaning, form, pronunciation, and practice. That's how they teach us. That's the methodology for teaching grammar, right? First, the meaning, which you already have. Then you look at the form. That's how they say that in English. And you practice and you work on the pronunciation. That's it. And that is the reason why, for example, I communicate or I collaborate with many artists on many things. Like my other show recently, I think it was my last episode, was launching the new show art for Life is Feeling, Counting the Ways. And I'm working with a lady from Canada, Montreal, Canada, called Rosalind. And if you're interested, you can always head on over and check that out. As I said, it's a little more playful than this show. But that is one way in which I'm using art, trying still After 4 years, since 2019, before the pandemic, I've been trying to bring art in connection with the adult learning experience, and it seems to be happening. Another thing that I'm doing that some of you in Berlin might be interested in, I'm working on, with the support of a local bookshop, working on a little meetup that will involve looking at stories that you already know, stories that you already have the meaning of in German, and then exploring these same stories in English. And we're going to be meeting up maybe groups of 10 or something, and maybe we'll have some coffee and cake, or maybe Wein and Weizen, who knows. And that is a way as well that I'm trying to use art to bring it close to the adult learning experience. All right? So, again, Ian Antonio Padis are coming to you for the English Coach podcast, Living the Language. And it's a new format today. As I said, if you're interested, you can head on over to EnglishCoachPodcast.com, look for episode 83, and you can see the show notes exclusive, a little, behind the scene of how I do things, how I look when I'm talking. And I'd be happy to hear from you. Always asking for feedback. If you feel like, just say something, If you don't want to say anything, you can join the private listeners group for a more personalized listening experience. And the people who are in the listeners group are invited to, the events, whether it be musical events or book reading events or photography events or whatever it is that I have happening in Berlin. All right. So as I always say, with a small win is always a good way to begin. I am looking forward to hearing from you, and bye for now.